Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to episode 6 of our bracket tip series. This episode is going to be about identifying which top seeds are going to go down first, whether it be before the Sweet 16, in the Sweet 16, or the Elite 8, and how to make sure that your bracket accounts for those. So, welcome to episode 6 of our 7-part series. If you haven't watched episodes 1 through 5, make sure to find them on our YouTube channel. And without further ado, let's get into this video. So starting with the 1 seeds, those teams this year are likely going to be Gonzaga, Baylor, Illinois, and Michigan. Again, the bracket isn't going to be announced for another 4 days as I'm recording this currently. But right now we have a pretty good idea who the 1 seeds are. So historically speaking, over the past 10 years, Sweet 16s have had on average 3.31 seeds. So they've had, at least 3, if not all 4 1 seeds make the Sweet 16. Elite Eights have had about 2.1 on average, and Final Fours have actually had 1.9 on average. So it's smart to stick with the 1 seeds. They are the 1 seeds for a reason. So this means take all 4 of them into your Sweet 16 unless you really feel confident in an 8 or a 9 seed. If you're so-so on an 8 or a 9 seed, it's probably safest just to take all 4 1 seeds automatically to the Sweet 16. Take 3 of them into the Elite 8, and then take either 2 or 3 of them into the Final 4. Again, you're going to want to find some 2 seeds, 3 seeds, and maybe even some lower seeds to fill out that Final 4, because all 4 1 seeds, I think, have only made the Final 4 once. It was the year that Derrick Rose made the national championship with Memphis and lost to Kansas. Coach Calipari, who's now at Kentucky, was the coach of that Memphis team. But it's not likely to happen, right? The 1 seeds, although they're good, they're going to play other good teams, and anything can happen. So it's generally smart to take 2 or 3 of them and to find those other really good caliber teams to fill in there with them. Like we've been saying this whole time, the later games in your bracket pool are worth more points. So whatever scoring system you're using, whether it's ESPN or NCAA or Yahoo, your first round games are going to be worth either 1 or 10 points, depending on what multiple system you're working in. But we'll just use 10 for this example. So your first round games, if you get them right, are worth 10 points. Then the second round game, if you pick the winner right, it's 20 points, then 40, then 80, all the way up to the Final 4, where you're getting 160 points per game correctly predicted. So we'll talk about the Elite 8 because that's the game that you're picking to get your team to the Final 4. If you can predict the right team to get into the Final 4, it's worth 80 points per team that you get in there, which means that it's the equivalent of picking 8 first-round games correctly. So it seems a lot easier to pick 1 game rather than 8. So making sure that you have the right Final 4 teams is honestly the second biggest key to winning any bracket pool. The biggest key, which is what our final episode is on, episode 7, is choosing the right national champion. So we'll have a deep discussion on that, and then we'll update you throughout the next week before your bracket picks are due, before the first 4 tips off, and the first round tips off next Friday. So we'll get into more of a discussion on that. But remember, you always want to make sure the later in you get, the more valuable your picks are. So make sure you're making the right choices later, and maybe be a little riskier early in the bracket rather than later. Moving on to our discussion of the 2 seeds, right now it's looking like that's going to be Iowa, Alabama, Ohio State, and Houston. Sweet 16s have had on average 3.12 seeds. Elite 8s have had 1.7. Final 4s have had just under 1 on average. So our recommendation: take 3 of them into the Sweet 16, take 2 into the Elite 8, and then take 1 into the Final 4. This being said, we've talked about this before. It's all about finding that balance, and we'll go into a little more discussion on that later in this very video. So you'll learn how to, or at least the concept behind which 2 seed to choose. We're not necessarily saying that right now, which one to choose, but you'll learn the mindset and how to approach choosing which single 2 seed you should take into the Final 4. Talking about 3 seeds, again, Sweet 16s on average have had 2.83 seeds per year over the last 10 years. Elite 8s have had 1.3, and Final 4s have had 0.4 on average. That means about every other year you see a 3 seed make the Final 4. So, with this being said, take 3 of them into the Sweet 16, only drop 1 of them beforehand. Take 1 into the Elite 8, so probably have 2 of them losing in the Sweet 16, and then either take none or 1 into the Final 4. We wouldn't recommend taking 2 3 seeds, but we wouldn't recommend taking 2. Either take 0 or take 1. So moving on to 4 seeds, this is the last sort of power team we'll talk about. The sort of the top 16 overall teams. This is teams 13 through 16. Sweet 16s have seen 2.2 of them on average, which means about half of them go down before that. Elite Eights have seen 0.8 on average, and Final Fours have seen 0.2 on average, which means only about 1 out of every 5 years do you see one make a Final Four, and only about every other year do you see one make a Elite Eight. So what does this mean? Take 2 of them into the Sweet 16, and then based on whether you really like the team or not, take 0 or 1 into the Elite Eight, and then potentially take the same 0 or 1 of them into the Final Four. This will ensure that your bracket is composed of the right composition of seeds as we move on. Again, it's all about playing trends and making sure that you're balancing taking a chalk bracket. And chalk, for those of you who might not know, means just taking the higher seed every single game. That's what the term chalk means. That's named after like sidewalk chalk, which means just chalk it in. Put the 1 seeds through. So there's a balance between that and then picking every 16 seed, which I've actually affectionately called the anti-chalk bracket, which is just take the lower seeds because you like chaos. So filling out the right bracket is all about finding the balance between those 2 different methodologies. And then once you have that sort of breakdown of what the seed should be, figuring out which teams should you take from those different seed pools. So moving on, let's talk about a little bit of a statistical angle here on how to decide which top seeds will go down first. Now, we're not commenting on any team specifically in this year's field. We're talking about a general rule based on past data that you yourself can apply, or if you want to buy our picks, not buy our picks, but listen to our picks, because we're going to be putting some of them out there for the public. And then you're always welcome to buy our picks through the links in our Instagram and Twitter bios. But yeah, we're not going to be talking about any team specifically here. We're just talking about the methodology that if you guys listen to will most likely line up with what the analytics tell us through our different algorithms. So avoid choosing against national title contenders. And these aren't just the 1 seeds. There are national title contenders all the way down actually this year to maybe the 6 seed line. Only certain teams qualify, and we'll go into the next episode about what qualifies you as a national title contender. But don't pick against them. Try to pick against the like we said, the weaker 1 seeds, the weaker 2 seeds, etc., because those are the ones that are more likely to go down than the national title favorites. And like we said, our next episode goes into a little more detail on this, so make sure you tune in to episode 7 when that drops tomorrow. Find a balance between your least valued top seeds and your most valued Cinderella candidates. This is that balance we were talking about earlier when I mentioned Loyola Chicago, because everyone seems to really like them this year. Just because they're the best 8 seed or whatever team you're looking at is the best 7 seed out there, if they're paired up against the best 1 seed, it might not be as valuable of a pick as if maybe the second best 7 seed in your mind is paired up against the worst 2 seed or the worst 1 seed, So always find that balance. Make sure you don't like the favorite and you like the underdog statistically, and find that balance, because it's not always the worst 1 seed that's going to lose, and it's not always the best underdog seed that's going to win. There's always that balance between those 2. And then if you're looking at individual team statistics, here's ones that actually have the most significance in determining an upset, actually determining a winner in any game at all. You're looking at the offensive rating of the team and subsequently their defensive rating, which is how many points per 100 possessions they score and per 100 possessions they allow. Obviously, you want a team that scores more points per 100 than their opponent and lets up less points per 100 than their opponent. You're going to look at EFG, which is effective field goal percentage. So it's pretty much basic field goal percentage, which is the number of shots you make divided by the number of shots you attempted. But it adjusts a little bit for the fact that 3-pointers are harder and more valuable than 2-pointers. Obviously, they're worth more points, therefore they're more valuable. You're also going to want to look at turnover percentage differential. Now, this is looking at what percentage of possessions, so out of 100 possessions, how often are you turning it over? Let's say you turn it over 10 times out of every 100 trips down the floor. And then how often does your opponent turn it over? And looking at that, you want to look at a good turnover percentage differential. If you turn it over way less than your opponent will, that means you might get 2 or 3 extra chances at the basket, and that can turn into maybe 6 more points, and that could be the swing in the game. So always look for a good turnover percentage differential, especially when you're looking at Cinderellas. Cinderellas always need a good turnover differential when you're looking to pick them. Turnover differential is indicative of what we like to call sloppy play or a lack thereof. If you have a high turnover differential, you could be the most, or not differential. If you have a high turnover percentage, you could be the most talented team out there, but you're playing sloppy ball and you can easily lose to a lesser team. Whereas even if you're a mediocre team and you never give the opponents extra possessions and free points, you might be better served and might be able to spring that upset and go farther than people think you can. And then the last statistic there that we mentioned is 3-point percentage. This should seem obvious. If you get hot from three, you've seen it before. I'm sure everyone's seen it. If a team's hot from three, they can do anything, right? They can come back from deficits. They can make a huge lead. So if they're shooting well from three on any given night, whether it's an individual player's 3-point percentage that you really like or just the team's overall 3-point percentage, that would be another place to look at, either the underdog having a good 3-point percentage or maybe the favorited team, the higher seeded team, not being able to shoot the three very well, and thus if they get behind, it's going to be harder for them to catch up if they can't shoot the three ball. So with that being said, that's all that we have for today's episode, talking about the statistics behind our Sweet 16 and Sweet 16 makeup in there for the teams, the higher seeds that won't make the Sweet 16 or won't make the Elite Eight, etc. This is a 7-video series. Obviously, this is episode 6. If you haven't seen any of the previous 5, make sure you go check those out. Episode 7, which is about how to pick your national champion and what makes a national champion candidate, will be coming out the day after this one is uploaded. So if you're watching this one the day it's uploaded, congratulations. It comes out tomorrow. If not, it should already be up. Thank you guys for watching this series. It's been a pleasure to make them, and our goal is to make you a more informed bracketologist this year and filling out your bracket in your bracket pools. So with that being said, make sure you follow us on Instagram and Twitter for all of your March Madness content as we count down towards Selection Sunday. Make sure you subscribe and subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, drop a comment with anything else you want to see from us this March Madness season. I've been Rob from Hoop Power Analytics, and thanks for watching.